probably 11:06 now. You are meeting me in I don't know, this is like 2 hours after I woke up, and I'm kind of like, I'm still getting the swing of things. I got a couple open tabs, but we're going to complete those things. I have a lot of house care things to take care of. I got to do some chores here, cleaning the dishes, folding my laundry, overall straightening up my space. And then after I go ahead and take care of that, I'm going to dash a little bit so I can make some money so that I'm able to go out of town this weekend and care for my grandma. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what's on the docket. But for at least a week, I've been trying to record this video over obsession, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But just because of a lot of things that kept on coming up, I'm over here trying to secure jobs and some more stuff. I really didn't have a lot of time to like sit down and refine what I was actively wanting to put into this video, but I did take a lot of notes, so it's gonna help me be super sweet and succinct with what I wanted to discuss in this movie. But I just wanted to get a couple housekeeping things out the way in terms of just explaining what all I had going on, the mindset I'm going into in making this. Because when I had wrote this initially, I intended to make this the same day, but I realized I probably needed a little time for it to marinate and cook because I ended up experiencing a lot of things in that week past that to me kind of lended to a lot of the things in the movie. And now whether or not I'll offer like the anecdotal experience after this part is a whole nother thing, but I'm gonna peel this orange in a Vic Mensa way and just talk about the movie as I experienced it, and as I kind of like recollect, maybe I'll interject with some of my personal experience in it, but I have notes. So long story short, I watched Obsession with one of my homegirls maybe like at this point almost 2 weeks ago. Really when it like we went to watch it on a Saturday after, not Saturday, Sunday after it came out, and honestly, theater was packed out. Like it's genuinely like one of the most I hadn't heard anything about it I only saw like snippets of a trailer prior to watching it. In fact, when my homegirl had asked me if I wanted to watch it, I'm thinking like, oh, this is like some TV show that I hadn't like heard about or some shit like that, because folks are always suggesting me series and whatnot, and I didn't try to stay tapped in with all the different movies that's coming out right now, but I'm like, only a handful of them have seen appealing, and I haven't seen a lot of like video reviews about all of the films I wanted to watch this summer. Like, I love Boosters, and The Backrooms especially. This was like a dark horse in a way that like I had no idea that this was going to be the banger of out of everything that I've seen so far, and that really I've heard and seen some mixed reviews about the other two. But once I watch those, maybe I'll come and drop a little something for that. And it really depends on how like deep and thorough the film is in and of itself, because Obsession was super super layered, but it wasn't a super drawn out movie to where it felt like we were meandering and meandering and meandering. In fact, it was a very predictable movie for the points it was trying to make, and I love that. But like, I feel like if I'm to do say analysis over I Love Boosters, it would be a lot more layered and a lot more intricate, just because I know Boots Riley. If you've ever seen anything else he's made, Sorry to Bother You, what else? I'm a Virgo. That's a limited series, I think, and that was really good. Like, that's one of my favorite projects by him. That it just I can assume that it's gonna end up being something that you could talk about for hours, and I don't want to like take too much time on that. When we're eating a blood orange, excuse me, they got them at Trader Joe's right now. But it's really like half the bag be good, half of it don't. I think they be needing a little extra time, but it's really not the time for citruses. But anyways, if I were to talk about that, I feel like it would take me hours versus this, where it's not like so fantastical. There are some spiritual elements. There are some things that are like generally what I experienced in the theater. There were some things that very evidently went over some of the audience's head. And I feel like some of the other films will definitely do that as well. But I'm like, well, this seems abundantly clear to me. So what the fuck are we talking about? So, boom. I'm gonna just dive right into my notes, right? So that movie was dead ass fully genuinely horrifying to me. Not even just from a gore aspect, because I consider myself like a horror movie lover. even as a kid, like I would be sitting up watching like Saw and shit, or really all the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, the boogeyman was scared of me. If we're being fucking real, like I am not afraid to dive into dark, weird topics. There's some things like some films like I just don't fuck with, like what's that movie like Anna is Missing or something like that, or Emily is Missing something. It was more because she was going through a hard life and she got on the internet, started talking to a weird dude. Now I know there's a lot of movies about like being careful on the internet with strangers and shit like that, but the way the movie I'm talking about ended is the cat being put in a barrel, her and her friend put in a barrel in an undisclosed location on, I want to say, the deep web, and they suppose we get it alludes to them dying. Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't fuck with that stuff. Like to be real, I fuck with psychological thriller as well, but some topics is like I feel like the way it's depicted is very ham-fisted. I understand some people need that, and I would even argue that white people really need to see very jarring for some reason. I'm not saying they should need to see it, but for some reason, those are the type of people, or people who are just generally detached from their emotions, need to see very, very brash and almost disgusting, violent things depicted right in their face for them to understand how great it is, because they've been sheltered for too long and they have no reason to believe that life can be hard for them. That's my theory. I'm gonna sit that there. We're gonna leave it alone, maybe, but we'll come back to it for some part of analyzing this, because I'm just like that's very crucial to why I feel like also why some of it was misunderstood in Obsession. But yeah, for me, the movie was horrifying, just in everything it's depicting in it, especially in like because we're looking at a relationship in particular and the dynamics in patriarchal relationships that are like inherently detrimental to both men and women in the ways that they deal with each other. I've only been having this conversation, especially as a queer black woman, for a really, really long time. And I'm just like, bro, like to know that it still wasn't fully understood by some of the audience, and I don't want to like take it away from people who dead eyes did, like it could have been plenty other people in the audience that got me. But me and my friend who are both queer, like we were picking up on all the science elements and everything, and especially me being someone who is them presenting still attracted to men, and thus a lot of men still try and approach me and pursue me and stuff like that. It rang very true in terms of the way that obsession manifested, or the ways in which in particular men folk try and act like their obsession is genuinely love, and in the same way the ways that things are depicted through Nikki as well as the woman, it's very real. I don't feel like I embody a lot of the obsessive elements that she had, but I even see that too, like different conversations on the internet, across the board. It doesn't even matter the racial background, but about the very manipulative and genuinely abusive ways that straight people get into relationships and kind of idealize the partner that they have and then become codependent on them, as like say this person is a source of their self-worth. If they're not being everything they can or giving themselves fully away to this partner, then that means that they're worthless, or the other partner isn't shit. And that's how like a lot of the abusive elements that were demonstrated in there that involve the gore. And that's another thing too, I'm not a gore bitch, but this is the one instance where I felt like gore was used instrumentally to depict just how violent and abusive a lot of these tendencies are to everybody involved, not just women themselves, but also men. Because the actions of each character, like in the relationship we'll discuss later, are not mutually exclusive to men or women. Both engage in those behaviors, and the movie is speaking to a pattern of thought, or a pattern of relating to others that does not allow for the person to fully exist as themselves with autonomy and agency, right? But I feel like the gore displayed just how detrimental that shit is for real. But especially in the ways that my generation or Gen Alpha, or really a lot of people, because if you grew up on the internet in any capacity or just spend abnormal amounts of time on the internet, I mean like screen time every day is just OD. You have likely engaged in parasocial activity on the internet or between you and another person. And even if it was just on the internet, people can do that in real life as well. Like especially if you didn't really have a lot of experience connecting with people in earnest or getting to know people, getting outside of your comfort zone, especially as me being an introverted and a shy person, like I grew up at a time where internet was coming up. I've engaged in parasocial activity, especially in my middle school to early high school days. And then as a kid, I also had a hard time relating to others or feeling like people would actually like me for who I was in trying to be friends with folks or make friends. This is all a very real thing. I'm not saying I'm above any of this stuff, so to speak. I'm not better than anyone for having gotten over these things, but I am above acting in these ways as an adult. But that being said, I know from personal experience that you can be parasocial to people in real life. And a lot comes from idealizing people that you really don't know. And if we're being real, are afraid of knowing more because you feel like they are going to reject you, right? So we'll get into that. I'll work back around. But yes, especially with the way parasociality has become a hot topic in a lot of social media sphere, we can assume like this is the same type of dynamic we're observing between Baron, the main character, and his infatuation with Nikki, who is really only ever depicted as a close friend of his. So we can assume from the very beginning that the relationship is super close and amicable, admitting they share so much time and interest between one another. Regardless, we never really see them alone before Baron's wish, especially not from Nikki's point of view to observe genuine chemistry. The movie starts with Bear, Ian, and Ruthie, and Ruthie is this side female character that really only appears in this first scene and we think that he's talking directly to Nikki. It starts with them in a cafe they frequent evidently as friends, where Bear is practicing how he will confess feelings to Nikki, a friend slash coworker of all of them. He speaks about how much she means to him, and arguably it's super, super mushy. Bear and Ian, the Ian is like his closest homeboy, are sitting up after this interaction. Like Ian mentions just how embarrassing Bear's fake confession was, and we see their dynamics be that of a brotherly one where they can talk about anything. Bear is clearly insecure about his ability to attract women or even seem truly interesting, seeing as though he's more of a sensitive guy, but he is successfully dissuaded by Ian from confessing to Nikki in that manner. Now, we don't see it yet, but we can assume that while Bear and Nikki are comfortable sharing certain sensitive things with one another through fake confession, Ian clearly knows Nikki in a more intimate context, or at least in a more romantic sense, because he says very confidently that Nikki would or wouldn't like certain stuff that Baron is mentioning. Not to mention, he probably doesn't even know her personally either. I feel like in this situation, in that very first scene, we see that somewhere in there, Ian has some intimate knowledge of her and what she may or may not be interested in, but it's again only from a male perspective. We really don't hear from Nikki in this situation. We don't hear from her other homegirl, and thus we really don't know how she would feel about Baron coming to her. But we can assume that, hey, everybody just has a crush on her, and she seems to be this overall sweet, lovely girl that in real life everybody just wants to be without having considered what she has going on in her life. The only other girl in the scene, Ruthie, is actually offering very concrete things that he could do instead of, say, confessing as openly and deeply to her. Also, outside of the way of just nagging at her that Ian suggests, where he's like, oh, you should just mention how we were in middle school and how she used to get made fun of. Like, how the fuck would that really work with anybody? One. And then two, it also demonstrates that Bear knew her in a more sensitive, friendly context enough to know that, hey, she is a sensitive person. She is someone that cares about what all her friends have going on, and thus he should have trusted himself a little more in terms of what he should have gone about doing, and then also listen to the only other woman in the situation, not just take advice from his homeboy. Until we actually meet Nikki for the first time, we witness Bear miss every single sign that would otherwise bring him closer to Nikki genuinely, as he operates more within his attraction for her as opposed to being himself and listening to her. He also opts to lie about the passing of his cat, which happens literally the scene after he leaves that cafe, as to not appear mushy or sensitive, even though most of the women, especially Sarah, who is another one of their coworkers and has a crush on him, appreciate his timidness and sensitivity, as it makes him a better friend and easier to come to than other men in their friend group, or Ian, if you will. So he stubs the warning of Sandy, his cat, that I want to assume and imply that was maybe the family cat lived in the house that he ends up moving into. Now we don't see him actively moving into the house in this movie. We can just allude to the fact, because he says later on in the movie that the house was his grandma's, they passed. They also demonstrated that the place he moved from prior was much smaller than where he is now, and he was talking about just how comfortable all that stuff was. And then also we see in the medicine cabinet, he's living in an already furnished 70s style home. The medicine cabinet has a bunch of different medication for someone who would have been sick prior. And he hasn't, and nowhere in the movie do we see that he has things that are diagnosed or things he actively struggles with. So I would assume these are medicine for old folks. I'm just deducing all of this, but this is where I feel like the extra theory comes from, if you will. So Sandy the cat dies from overdosing on pills that were in the medicine cabinet. I don't know if it was intentionally left open or Sandy the cat just happened to get into it. And also thinking back, there were so many signs that Bear shouldn't otherwise ask her to do more. The fact that Ian mentioned that trivia night wouldn't be the best time because they're all friends. And he didn't share the fact that Sandy had died. He told his friends on the phone, hey, I don't think I'll be able to come to trivia. I have stuff to work on, but Sandy just died. Then as he gets a chance to talk to Nikki, he doesn't mention the pain that he's going through at all, or the fact that he's mourning. In fact, he lets her convince him to come down to trivia night, right? After he literally wasn't going to. In that same situation, he ignores that to be present for Nikki. But then when she breaks her necklace over the phone, or rather it falls down the drain, he has an opportunity to support her in a genuine way in getting her another necklace at the metaphysical shop, but instead decides to get the One Wish Willow and never even lets her take it for herself. Also, he doesn't heed the warnings within the metaphysical shop, especially with the people who are selling it, to let him know that the One Wish Willow has dire consequences. And again, I'll touch back into the spiritual aspects of things a little bit later, because in real life, in terms of metaphysical or spiritual dealings, you very rarely want to just buy random stuff from a shop. If you already, one, you already don't believe it works and you're just buying it hoping that it would, that's superstitious. And in real life, that means you're putting your power in things that are outside of yourself again. I believe that's a larger theme that's supposed to be illustrated throughout the film. But you weren't listening to anybody that told you about it either. And nobody should have to warn you outright or tell you that shit's gonna kill you. And a lot of times, when it comes to dealing in spiritual workings, anybody gonna tell you when some shit gonna kill you. If they're a genuinely kind person, cool, but some energies operate to keep you beguiled into thinking that a quick fix will be your best bet, especially if you want it bad enough. And I'll touch on that later, but he couldn't have known better, but he should have known better, if you catch my drift. So I touch on the next thing. It said also the idea of superstition, using witchcraft to undergird someone's free will simply for love spells. It's crazy. We see all over the internet, maybe not as much now, but if you get into certain niches of relationship content or any 50-50 shit, any arguments regarding what the fuck people should do in straight relationships, you'll get into the territory of people talking about, oh, I did a love spell on this guy, or a lot of men don't do. That's why I was like, it's a funny subversion of the stereotypes of women being manipulative in that way. Anyways, I'll touch into it. But you'll get into a lot of those spaces on the internet where there's people openly admitting, yeah, I tried to do a love spell on somebody and it backfired, this, that, and the third. But whenever you're dealing in spiritual stuff, especially as it comes to witchcraft, and I'm not going to claim I understand everything about like pagan witchcraft or anything of the sort, but in dealing with any of those energies, it's always as above, so below. You can never sit up, like one of the first no-nos, especially if you're not somebody that's actually practiced in a lot of the stuff that they're talking about in this film, is you're never supposed to just engage with these energies passively or without serious time, energy devoted to understanding the energies and entities that you're working with. And to sit up and use your spiritual power to overcome somebody's free will, like get them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do themselves, or those feelings that are not already in their heart. One, a lot of times that shit will not work because one, you don't have the power to actually control somebody in that way. But even if you do find you do, like we can assume in this film, Baron's obsession for Nikki was so strong that it ended up working on her overcoming her free will. it's always going to end up in dire consequences. You're always going to end up sitting up, fucking up somebody's life, or having a situation where somebody's going to come to fuck up yours. You've disturbed an equilibrium in the universe just by virtue of being greedy, like just wanting something that was supposed to freely come to you, or you can energetically attract by embodying the things you want to receive. You feel me? You're cheating shit. In the universe, any energies, universal, spiritual, they don't fuck with niggas cheating shit. We will always get got back. Whether or not you can actually tangibly feel any of the stuff you're getting whacked by, it's neither here nor there, but you're gonna feel constantly aggrieved or constantly unprotected because of the things you did. You feel me? That's how people forgo their spiritual power, if we're being honest. Also, witchcraft manifests in a very psychological sense too, in the way that obsession keeps you from fully seeing people because it eclipses the real person, their whole person, in exchange for an ideal that the person could never fully embody. Never fully embody in a way of, how could that person ever be the perfect person for you? How could you ever be the perfect person for anyone? It's more of an alignment in which people come together and end up connected in a very authentic way. It's never really, whenever you're forcing it, it's just not gonna happen. And at the end of the day, like, these people don't know what version of them lives in your head, and the frustration that you experience whenever this person doesn't like you, or the rejection you have to experience when you find out somebody doesn't like you, is crucial for your self-development and further alignment. A lot of people take not getting what they want, especially not getting the person that they want, as a representation that they are not strong enough to get what the fuck they want out of the world. There's so much of how we operate in this world that is exploitative and extractive in the ways that people have to decide to fuck with you, bro. And if they don't fuck with you, it has to be their loss. Even if you don't feel like you're at the point in your life where you would like to be amazing or whatever the fuck, or say get the person you want. In real life, if you can't get the person you want, fuck it. Move on. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna feel lame as fuck, because sometimes you'll see other people getting what the fuck they want out of people, or getting to engage in stuff in ways very differently than you do. You might feel jealous. Like, I kind of understand it in a way that we'll use dating, for example. I'm personally just now, as a 24-year-old, seriously sitting confidently in the belief that I don't need to be having casual sex with anyone just to have it. And it's not to say, ooh, that's what I was doing, bopping around or anything like that, because I definitely haven't done that for, like, hold on, I'm 24, so I ain't really did all that. I'm sorry, math, bro. One thing about me, you'll find, I'm not a pro at that, but same. I really haven't engaged in relating to others or connecting with others, even in a romantic sense or a casual sense, however the fuck you want to call it, in 5 years. Meaning that was like freshman year college shit. That's young bitch shit. Like, there's nothing wrong with, being young and turn and seeing what you do like sexually, or how you like to interact with people, or finding out, oh, how do I embody my sexuality and stuff at this young age. But I don't really feel like those are safe ways to explore your sexuality. Like, of course, in hindsight, these are things you have to learn, there's hella shit you have to go through and experience that you otherwise don't feel like you have full agency to control the outcome of. But in real life, if you become more in tune with how you feel about certain interactions with people, or, hey, I was dating this one person and I found that I really didn't fuck with how they didn't care about my feelings past us messing with each other, you can assess, boom, moving through the next set of people I go through, I won't do this, I will do this, because I found that I maybe should have sat up and spoke up about my feelings on some shit sooner. Boom, boom, bop. That's how I've been able to establish, like, boom, I don't need to be interacting with sex or relationships in the same way that everyone else does. But you only learn those things through rejection and literal trial and error. Figuring out, although I might be physically attracted to this person, although I might even be sexually attracted to this person, I don't necessarily have to explore that before getting to know who this person is for real. And two, yeah, just because they look how the fuck I want them to look does not mean they're the person I want, or even would like, if you will. And a lot of people get lost in just the mere attraction things. I'm not even saying I don't, but in a way of overcoming is being real with yourself about damn, am I really feeling for this person? Do I really want to be cool with this person? Or is it merely that I was attracted to them? Boom, there was just sexual tension here. That's cool, but the discipline comes in knowing, bro, I don't need to pursue that in that way. Sometimes these people are just supposed to be your friends. And sometimes these folks are not supposed to be close to you at all and are otherwise mirroring with you who they think you would want to see out of them because they are also in a situation where they idealize you. And now that I'm in a situation where, hey, I have the discernment and the discipline to know, like, I don't need to be messing with every single person that comes across me, I'm still in a situation where now I'm in, say, a Nikki situation where there are a lot of people who idealize who I am as a person because I do a lot of work in myself to make sure I understand different settings and situations, but I'm still a human and I still go through crazy shit that would otherwise require for someone to get me fully and be intimate with me to then be able to be close with me or even be in a relationship with me. But there are some people, again, it takes discernment and discipline to even be like, even when you're confronted with somebody who kind of meets everything that you want physically, it takes a discernment to recognize what the fuck you want to even be able to move on and be like, okay, now I'm available for the next thing, or now I'm available for myself enough to work on my own shit to where should anyone else come down the line, I can easily say that don't work for me. That's something I experienced personally. I feel like in trying to understand what the fuck happened with Nikki in the spiritual sense, I said, I think it was a spirit of some sort stuck in Nikki's body that came and served to make sure Bear never needed or wanted anything or anyone else. And arguably, she served as his karma as he continued to disregard her life and free will to appear as a happy couple. She ends up taking away some of his, especially through destroying any other person he cared for. The movie is essentially be careful what you wish for. And it also touches on these ideas of limerence and male fantasy or loneliness, although I don't feel like it's restricted to the male sex, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like, I feel like everybody struggles with this across the board, and it has a lot more to do with the way that we are socialized. We go through gender socialization as opposed to it really being certain isolated between certain groups in essence, but there are certain patterning and behavior that occurs a lot more within specific genders and whatnot because of the ways they are or are not allowed to be genuinely emotionally in tune with themselves. That's why I focus on men folk. But touching on that, I think about the ways someone who stalks and ingratiates themselves in your life isn't truly caring or respectful of your boundaries. How codependency breeds obsession, especially when you can't be expressive to everyone you claim as a friend. Nikki describes him as cold or either a closed book or just like a handful of people that are friends with him. But others have seen his life, and he also knows the intimate details of his coworkers' lives. He is the confidant for many of his friends, but ends up feeling randomly connected to Nikki. Not because there's no reason to be genuinely attracted to her. Like, she's still a very beautiful woman, and it seems as though she was a really good friend, and that draws it in too. But this was more infatuation for him because, again, as we can see and demonstrate, whether or not he actually knows her enough to say for a fact like how she would feel about stuff, because you never really know how anybody's gonna respond. I hate to say it, like, you cannot control how somebody's gonna respond, and you cannot control people's reactions to things. But you're infatuated. Whether or not he trusts his connection with her, or he genuinely doesn't know how much she could possibly feel for him, which is revealed that he literally doesn't. But even if he did genuinely know her to some degree, the infatuation comes from not trusting her beliefs or anything her own, and rather this person should embody my feelings for them as I have them. You should feel appreciative of my like and attention for you simply because I have it, not because it actually makes sense with the connection we've already established. He truly believes that he can't share anything with anyone to be a reason why she must be meant for him. Because we see that he's able to share with her because she's willing to ask about it, but we see throughout the rest of the movie that that nigga doesn't know anything about her and never cared to ask. Most of what we see of Nikki is through his perspective, and most of the characters are the ones that provide more insight and details about her life, demonstrating she's an open person generally and a really good friend. He is the only one not being a true friend to her and seems not to understand what she wants out of assumption. I think it fits the thing of an Easter egg, but I don't feel like it was hidden or anything, and that's why I'm like not necessarily, because I feel like this was very intentional, given the overtly say metaphysical aspects of the movie, but Nikki has eyes of Horus on both of her wrists. You feel me? Who we can assume she got these tattoos from Sarah, because Sarah later in the movie we find that she wants to go to art school so that she can become a full-time tattoo artist and get the fuck out of the shop for real. Anybody that understands, like, I can't even say like you even need to understand Egyptian spirituality or mythology or anything like that super deeply to understand what the fuck eyes of Horus even represent. But that's spiritual protection. She had that shit on her wrist. And I'll dive into it a little bit more in the rest of my notes, but in real life, like, I believe that's one of the main reasons she didn't end up fully losing her soul to the shit. And although we see like, oh, the one way out of this situation is for Bear to kill himself, I believe that's how she still maintained most of her soul at the same time that not Nikki was taking over her body. You feel me? And I'm thinking about how him violating her free will inadvertently made her kill her own friends or not even feel remorse for their deaths. It really is an inversion of abuse dynamics that we typically see because we have a sympathetic main character, or rather an antagonist out of Bear, and a malicious protagonist out of Nikki. Because me personally, I know generally what makes somebody a protagonist is like how much of the film focuses on their lives, but I feel like this is more Nikki's film because he spends so much time obsessed with her that it inadvertently becomes her. This all becomes her issue too. Maybe I'm crazy for that. Some other people would have like different theories on that, but I feel like this is just really about her. You feel me? It said this definitely makes me think of the way codependency and abuse manifest between seemingly loving couples when one partner is insecure with their own ability to reach and connect to others. And we typically see this embodied today through male family annihilators, although women engage with this to a degree with children. And I think about the ways that the audience reacted to a lot of the stuff that once Nikki was not Nikki, and that's how I'll refer to her past this point whenever I'm trying to explain her after she's possessed. But when she becomes not Nikki and even all of the crazy different, say, self-flagellating or self-mutilating is rather wrong. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm very particular about this thing. So, and I might be no, that's whipping oneself. So in a way, I'm right, but in this way, it's not just self-flagellation, it is self-mutilation because she's actively physically abusing herself, destroying parts of her physical body, even her beauty, which is one thing that I want to harp on because that is the number one reason that Bear even finds himself attracted to her. That's also the reason why he can't tell that Sarah likes him because he's not physically attracted to her. It's not to say she's not beautiful, but he's not physically attracted to her. And because he's not blinded by that physical attraction, he's not able to see that she really likes him, right? But the self-mutilation that she inflicts on herself, those were things that people in the audience were laughing at as if like, or not even just that, but the way that she would get upset over the fact that he would leave her and go do things with his friends and stuff like that. There would be women in the audience like, oh my gosh, me, or men in the audience like overly cackling at those moments as if like, oh yeah, that's my wife, da 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 da. Not being able to recognize inherently abusive dynamics that those are, but not even being able to tell that the movie is poking fun at them or rather critiquing the ways that they act in these relationships was really like the most maddening thing. Like niggas was mad at me for laughing at the fact that she was walking backwards or moving really weird. And it was mostly because it was uncomfortable. I'm an uncomfortable laugher. Like I'll laugh at anything, but like some shit makes me unnerved enough, I'm gonna giggle. Cause what the fuck is going on here? But niggas got mad at me for laughing at that, but wasn't mad about everybody hee and ha-ha about the fact that she's getting mad that he's leaving her and that she's threatening to kill herself. That's crazy. But we really see the codependent analogy embodied through Nikki, especially in a way that made many women in the audience resonate, which was very scary to me because I imagine a lot of them feel as though they can't do much without their man, except. But you're supposed to recognize how toxic and codependent that really is. And even though it's displayed through Nikki, these feelings, thoughts, and beliefs she expresses are directly from Bear's own deepest desires. That's literally the whole point of the One Wish Willow, and why it feels like when she becomes not Nikki, it is so disembodied from her true intentions and desires for herself that it becomes a point where she is actively trying to fight against the way that not Nikki or the entity or the manifestation of Bear's desires are controlling her, keeping her from being herself or acting in ways she would have naturally done. You feel me? So he otherwise would act that way in a relationship with someone like her, especially as we see him grieving a mother slash grandmother figure in the house. But in society, those behaviors that Nikki displays are not acceptably displayed among men, even though they engage in the same thing. And I look at the archetypes slash stereotypes of cishet relationships and ask you over again, is this love as her behavior escalates? We never really know if Bear sees it as excessive or wrong until all his friends are dead and he has no choice but to kill himself to release himself from the curse. Especially since he almost asked not Nikki to make a wish for him, we can assume he does it to save himself, not necessarily to free her. Especially since all of the folks that not Nikki, ended up killing were Nikki's friends too. You feel me? That's one thing. They're too, and they're by her hands at that. And throughout all of the movie, even as she is say possessed by this not Nikki figure, she still is very cognizant and aware of everything she's engaging with, and just can't seem to gain back control of who she is. So I think about that because at the end of the movie, it ends sourly, sadly, because she has to sit up and recognize she don't have nobody else after this. But that shit, I really want to believe that even in death, that nigga didn't really understand how bad all of that was, or how not worth all of the shit that he did was, because he just wanted to be loved. You feel me? But to touch on Ian's wish, he said he asked for $1 billion in spite of Bear's wish because Bear still cannot prove to everyone else that he's not obsessed with Nikki. He keeps on suggesting on and off that Bear is taking advantage of her, and I'm talking about Ian here, mostly because his feelings are infused in the reason why he can't supportively help Bear confess his love. Truthfully, even though Ian doesn't know or understand her true desires between them, even though Ian actually has been casually intimate with Nikki before the events of the story, even he doesn't know or understand her true desires between them. Sarah tells Ian upon finding not Nikki's behavior to be weird that Nikki only ever saw Bear as a little brother slash friend, which ends up being known and exposed by not Nikki during trivia night in that weird little, what do they call that, monologue where she's talking about like, me and Bear will be together forever, and it was like a Hansel and Gretel type metaphor, but it was incestuous, yeah. Scary boots, but in the ways that lended toward incestuous stuff, and we know the original Hansel and Gretel myth to involve like a witch. That's what I see it as. Either not Nikki was possessed by a witch, or say she was possessed by the spirit of a family member, because that's the only other way that would be genuinely interpreted as incestuous. And that's also why I feel like, hey, really, whoever was in the spirit of that old house that he stays in, whether that be a grandmother, mother, aunt, had a codependent relationship with him as well at some point in his life. We'll touch on that briefly. I don't have enough in what I saw in the movie in the theaters to say that for sure, but maybe the director's cut will come out. But that whole monologue right there, I don't fuck with that. I can't speak to what female family member it would have been, but like that's what that touched on to me. But Ian also treats Bear like a younger brother, mostly because everyone can pick up on the fact that he's in need of friendship and nurturing, but even his care is too brother, like bro-ish, if you will, and not sensitive enough for Bear to feel comfortable sharing with him. He does not believe Bear when he first mentions Nikki's obsession, and is more focused on the sexual activities that they didn't have in her spending the night initially, implying he views Bear and Nikki as extensions of himself as a man and as friends of his, as opposed to like individuals themselves. I think analyzing even the supporting characters helps to demonstrate like the ways that even friends can enable this behavior, or enable the behavior of the person who's genuinely like fucking up stuff for multiple people, but then also how the ways in which we like generally are socialized as folk allow us to take away somebody's real personhood and their true identity in order to like be digestible or understandable by their metrics. It isn't until Ian hears Nikki's lie about her father that he gets truly suspicious of her behavior as opposed to Bear's. He and many others know of the estrangement she has with her father, but either Bear doesn't recall or he's blinded by his attraction to her to recall. I thought that was very crucial there, but it was kind of like weird that Ian cared but didn't care only because he was like, oh, I fucked her. Not necessarily because, oh, this is genuinely or potentially putting Bear in harm's way, if that makes sense. So he is enabling the behavior. He also doesn't show genuine concern for Nikki, even as Bear tries to show him that her behavior is strange. He does fear her behavior though, and instead opts to ask Bear to handle that or get out, and even ask Bear to exclude her from trivia night, which is something everyone otherwise knew that she loved. Crazy to me, because how do you care? How do you know her? And otherwise are friends with her, but then don't actually demonstrate any concern for her behavior. Also disinvite her from trivia night, and only see Bear as the victim of her behavior when you know that she wasn't even like that with you. Crazy boots. But it seems people could pick up on the weight of the obsession, but we're enabling the behavior changes by making excuses for the obviously weird behavior. This in turn convinces Bear to put up with it, expecting for the weirdness to stop as long as he bears with her escalations. Ian's deepest desire is to leave the damn shop too, not help his friends, and definitely wants to save face for real, otherwise ignorant to their plight until it embarrasses or directly affects him. The money he asked for out of the wish doesn't serve for much because he was killed, and it was because he didn't heed Bear's warnings about Nikki. Not Nikki had already planned to lure him in another way after she had killed Sarah, and he doesn't piece together the severity of who she's actually become until he's seconds before death. I think the most poignant parts of the stories are what we learn about the female characters, and that's why I feel like this movie is really about them, or in a way the director wanted us to focus and think about them in the entire story. And I feel like if you're someone who understands feminism or womanism and genuinely like cares about the woman folk or femme presenting folk or queer and trans folk like you claim you really do, you would have seen the folks or been looking at them just as equally as you look at, say, a Baron Ian the entire movie. That seems to be the major difference in the ways that people even paid attention to the story. I feel like their parts of the story are like the most crucial to this, because I think in a lot of these dynamics, when it comes to like infatuation, obsession, limerence. It's not to say women can't engage in it too. That's actually why they made Nikki the object of the obsession and then the executor of the obsession as well. Like both of them end up playing both roles of like this questionable ass individual. I think we tend to forget just how detrimental these things can be for women, and how much, whenever men folk operate in this way, just how much women still don't get an opportunity to be seriously supported or even cared for through tough times, because people really feel like when a woman gets herself into these things, she's not deserving of amnesty or understanding because you should have known better. But in real life, how was she supposed to do it? In real life, she was the only one being herself. Speaking of Nikki in this way, I felt as though Sarah and Nikki are the only two people with clear goals and dreams for more of themselves in the film. Nikki says before she changes or becomes, say, possessed by the spirit of the One Wish Willow, Nikki said that she intended to leave the music store over the phone with Bear because she wants more for her life. She just didn't really feel like the music store was going to allow her to do that. And Sarah also had been awaiting acceptance to art school. It's demonstrated that because of Bear's selfishness and inability to see how much the women care about him over his male friend's advice, leaves them susceptible to extreme danger. It touches on the ways anyone can and will get touched by an unaddressed abusive dynamic for even daring to help, and it touches on how hard it is to leave an abuser on average, confusing the abused for love, etc. One thing I'll say is that Sarah genuinely likes Bear from the beginning. Everybody can see that but him, but she gets paid dust by him except for when it comes to talk about their shared interests, which they deeply bond over. So they are actually much more compatible than he and Nikki are. And of course, ends up almost kissing her at trivia night just by virtue of the game they were playing, indicating that fate would have otherwise willed them together if he wasn't so scared to express his feelings to Nikki. And the rejection would have hurt, but the reality would have otherwise cleared him up enough to see that there's love much closer than he would admit. Patience and further conversation with his friends as friends would have easily shown him sooner all of the feelings people had for one another, but he was so closed off that he didn't understand the dynamics between them all. Recall that Sarah likes Bear. Everybody else knew that Sarah liked him and mentioned it multiple times in the film. I'm not sure how many people knew Bear liked Nikki. I think Sarah knew that at least because she could see him well, but he couldn't see her well. And then, of course, Ian knew that Bear liked Nikki as well because he was sharing with him. But Bear didn't even know that Ian had messed with Nikki prior. Bear didn't know that Sarah and Nikki had already had conversation about the fact that Nikki sees him as a little brother. And then Ian also knew that too. And nobody told him again because everybody thinks he's too sensitive, and based on the way he reacted to a lot of this stuff, it's true. But then he also doesn't trust himself, and that's a big problem too. The night she dies, immediately as she finds out and pieces together that, like, hey, a lot of weird stuff has been going on. When Sarah finally confesses, he damn near feels real love and attraction is being dragged by hell through not Vicky at home. She already had demonstrated her willingness to literally remove anybody in the way of her infatuation. She does that at trivia night. He was too selfish to recall that Sarah was actively in harm's way because Nikki also already said that she knew that Sarah liked him, and instead sets her up for death as she's about to get the only wish she ever wanted. For herself, mind you. It had no other attachment to anyone else. And it's that damn art school acceptance letter. Like, she finally gets in and she dies moments after. That shit was devastating. Like, I hated that scene. And it was really, like, gut-wrenching because that's a lot what happens in abusive dynamics. Like, as soon as somebody that genuinely cares tries to step in and care for the person or let them know, like, hey, I'm concerned for you and trying to get you out of that, they could very well either end up going back to the abuser or the abusive situation where that person can end up being put in a direct path of harm because that person hasn't fully disconnected from the person. And it's not even to say that folks that are in abusive dynamics are at fault for not leaving or continuing to stay in it, because on average, I think they said it takes like 7 to maybe 9 times to leave an abuser in a dynamic like that, because you really fear, you're very confused about what is supposed to be love, and you also fear the retaliation, but not genuinely listening to your people as soon as they mention it, and really everybody's lack of genuinely following up on different things they had already perceived as weird or abnormal behavior. They had elicited the situation. If we're being real, it's like everybody's fault equally as opposed to like just the niggas in an abusive setting. Although I do feel like Baron's ass was dead ass wrong. Fully. He couldn't have known what was going to happen, but at the same time, it's like that's what happens. Like when you refuse to learn the lessons in the way that the universe tries to present to you, you try to hurt things or make things easier for yourself in order to avoid the hurt and the pain that could eventually become a catalyst for you to change. The ways you will be worked and done in just to see that lesson is going to be a lot worse than the amount of rejection you were going to have to overcome or the work you were going to have to do to reinstill that confidence in yourself. That's just a fact. I hate to say it because life is already hard, but in real life, it behooves you to pay closer attention to the signs that you just might not be as well connected with people as you would otherwise think. I think the brutality each friend experiences in the movie is directly proportional to the amount of love they possess for Bear. Because again, I would say not Nikki, even if it was a witch controlling him or even if it was a codependent family member possessing him, it's literally the embodiment of his obsession for her. So I believe that, yeah, the amount of violence is proportional to the love he had for everybody. And it says, of course, Sarah dies in the most brutal way, but Ian is shot and killed short and sweet. Nikki may not have died, indicating that he loved her a lot, but she couldn't have killed herself. I believe the eye of force on her wrist and stuff like that really kept her, like I mentioned, already kept her autonomy enough to make it to where even though she was obsessed by the embodiment of his obsession, she was able to protect herself enough from that. She didn't really feel that way. So thus that kept her from actually experiencing the brunt of brutality, even though still very much damaged her face, harmed a lot of different parts of her body. She was sick. Like, it was just a lot of damage done as a result of his obsession. I think, especially in the ways that she physically abuses herself, we could say that that's why not Nikki desperately wanted to rid herself of real Nikki's soul and body, because her real care and like for Bear was keeping her from furthering Bear's original wish of obsession. It also points to the relative autonomy each of these people had in their lives to move on that Bear was envious of. Because really throughout this whole movie, we don't get to see or hear about any ideas or wishes Bear has for himself, but we get to see how everybody else is kind of moving on or intending to get themselves up out of the situation. And really in situations like that where you are somebody that is obsessed with folks or has an external locus of control where everything outside of you is supposed to make you important, you are a very envious or say jealous person. I would say definitely envious, because he's just you would otherwise just be plainly resentful or upset over the ways that people are getting to identify things for themselves or love in the way that they want to, or see things happier and brighter, as opposed to seeing that as stuff you can control within yourself. So that's my other theory on that. But said the love each of them had for each other was damn near unbearable to accept within an envious bear, I'm assuming, because he was grieving a lot. He had recently lost a family member whose house he was living in. He lives alone, and he recently lost Sandy the cat. So, with all of this being in mind, when you're a grieving individual, you're going through a lot of that stuff, especially if there isn't anybody else around you that seems to relate on that situation. It could easily make you feel like, bro, they have something I don't. I'm not sure when I'll ever be happy. Um, it makes sense to then feel a way about the ways that everybody else is connecting in this stuff. Or not even just feel envious, but to not be able to see the ways in which everybody cares about you. Everybody's seemingly going on shit or moving on without you over stuff. Sarah is otherwise not considered until it's relevant to Bear's story / understanding of the situation. That blew me and pissed me off. I felt for Sarah, because in real life I feel like Sarah in a lot of different situations, caring for some people that genuinely may not ever have the capacity to see you fully or see you as caring as you really are. I also know the odd and shifty movements of Nikki have a lot more to do with someone controlling her and say puppeteering her from afar, like possessing her body. I think of him calling the One Wish Willow number and hearing her screaming in agony, just as he did earlier in her possession, and how scary that was for me. And he was evidently scared too, but he still wasn't responsive or respectful enough of her own wishes and desires prior to her consciousness slipping back during not Nikki's sleep. You feel me? I think she asked him to kill her, which is understandably it makes sense why he wouldn't kill her, because he cares for her as he does. And at the end of the day, probably never wished for this to happen to her. I feel like he only does what he does to save himself, as opposed to free her from the situation. Because if he was really caring of her, he would have followed her wishes as she asked and killed her, because now she has to live on without any of her people. She doesn't have a support system anymore to even be able to, go through and move on life how she could have after she left the music store. And mind you, she has her fingerprints over every single different little thing that points to her friends being dead. So now she could very well potentially go to jail and never be able to experience the life of her own enjoyment ever again, because she don't have no people. She killed all her friends. They're going to think she's guilty, and how the fuck is she gonna explain she was being possessed by a nigga that's dead? That's not something you can even easily explain to folks. Like, that shit was crazy. But I also think about the fact that as not Nikki, she made that nigga eat his own cat. I have no idea what that symbolizes in a spiritual sense, because I don't play like that. I otherwise just felt like that was symbolic of the ways that abuse makes you say it makes you want to enjoy or indulge in the suffering of others as a partnership, as opposed to maybe anything super spiritual. Because I'm not to say it doesn't have meaning there, but I'm just not really sure what niggas would do with that. And if we're connecting it to say like an Egyptian mythological context, cats are also protected as well. So it's just like, in the sense of like everything that was there around him as a protector or to serve as like caring for him slowly dissipating. It's like how his inability to see how much good he had around him, that inability to be truly gracious and grateful of the friends he had around him, the life he was living, the home he had provided for him, the cat that he had for him, essentially left him open to getting manipulated by, not even just, even if you don't look at it from a spiritual context, but easily manipulated by his darker thoughts and desires that in real life, if actually engaged with in earnest or interrogated as to why he felt like he should even divert so much of the time that definitely needs to be focused on him into caring for that person, how boom, I just left him super susceptible to getting controlled, like he no longer had protection. Then he even found it funny as she was doing rituals or creating sacrificial altars for him in the home. Like, that's wild to me. But also the scene of her emotionless as they're having sex was super disturbing, and but it purposefully implied non-consensual slash reciprocal connections and the loss of agency during sexual assault. It said also how women experiencing abuse have to forgo their desires around their man because of love, and often pretend that they share the same desires, creating a fragmentation between herself and the sexual self, or really her real self and the non-Nikki. Like in abusive settings, having to assume the role of a person who's okay with it to appease the abuser, but then also having to keep yourself, your real self in the background protected so that doesn't have to speak so much to you as an entire person. Like again, it's disembodied, it's fragmented. I've been through a lot of this stuff myself, so it's kind of like the psychological aspects of it are crazy. So it's like I also think about how many people didn't have a problem with her until she was vocal about the weirdness that she was engaging in and physically violent toward herself, that meaning Nikki. And she routinely makes reference to wanting to be back beautiful with him and around others because it otherwise indicates an abusive connection. Again, lending to the patterning we see on a regular basis of how abusive relationships work, and abusers likely testing the boundaries or testing what is appropriate around groups of people to further reinforce to the victim that, hey, there's no one you can reach out to, or there's no way you'll be able to find anyone who sees you how I do or understands you in the ways I do, and nobody, because nobody can also relate to the shit that you're going through, it makes it harder for you to feel like you can actually reach out to people and get help. And also so much of the focus on beauty, because every single time he would do something she didn't like, she would hurt herself. It also points to the actual focus of his obsession with her just being a very beautiful girl. It was also because she was very sweet and a good friend and all this stuff too, but that was evidently the reason why he felt that he was more attracted to her, despite not even really having anything demonstrated that revealed that they would be genuinely compatible, but wasn't attracted to Sarah, who was very clearly attracted to him and also still very beautiful. But for some reason, because they were, I don't know, I don't see how they're any more or less friends than him and Nikki were, but I believe that's really the main reason as to why, like, she was even so pressed about getting back beautiful, and also because even in a general sense, as those being in relationships with them, like physical beauty and the ways that your physical beauty is maintained in relation to that man, and how, yeah, being man's partner means you're an extension of him, and thus if you look or act a certain way that's outside of what's appropriate for you as a partner, how everybody will kind of just like, I don't know, it says a lot about the man, and he otherwise seems weird and then won't have it people either. And that, like, not being pretty enough or not being womanly enough, not being nurturing enough in a relationship, it ends up being one of the main reasons for even abusing folks in the first place, like not conforming to what the fuck they feel like the relationship should look like. People were less concerned with her and more concerned about how it makes Bear look, and he seems smaller and a victim despite being the main perpetrator. I feel like those Gone Girl vibes. Like he didn't even, I don't, he at past the point he couldn't even accept or recognize that he was the one who was actively doing harm to her for as long as he was. He just continued to put up with it and was like, hey, end of the day, I did after this, I'll make it work, yeah. But even though he had already told Ian, like, bro, I did something, Ian didn't believe him and just otherwise jumped to saying, hey, yeah, this girl's crazy. She doesn't act like that. She's a liar. She is weird. This, that, and the third, but not seeing how, like, at one point he was able to say, hey, I feel like you're taking advantage of her, but then past the point at which it is demonstrated that she's just being weird around everybody else, now it's easily turned into, hey, let's exclude her, she's being weird, and in real life, like, she's crazy, when that's not how you felt when you were telling him to leave her alone. You actually had maybe some respect for her, but now that they're actually involved in a relationship, like, you can't even see how he would potentially be the aggressor in this situation, or the incendiary individual in this situation. His nickname literally being Bear, this was my favorite point of the movie, aka Baron, has to connect to the bear versus man conversation, and his brutality being likened to a bear and how he smothers her through foregoing her free will and imagines it protective from a reality without him, as well as his potential to devour her through this love. Both are harmful, meaning the bear and the man, but It is the intentions, not the appearance, that indicates harm. I'll repeat it. Both are harmful, because this also applies to Nikki and Bear. Both are harmful, but it is the intentions, not the appearance, that indicates harm. Nikki was beautiful at first, and really always beautiful, but at the point in which she becomes abusive, that's all people could see, or all that she was worried about. But it's the intentions that cause harm. And Bear is otherwise seen as a safe or sensitive and sad man who could never do any harm. But it is not the appearance, it is the intentions that indicate harm. He seems rather dopey, defenseless, and incapable of harm, but harms everything around him, including the cat, through his negligence or inability to recognize, hey, I'm not doing well and I should probably focus on myself.
Hey, welcome to the end of the video, you guys. I'm grateful that y'all stayed to the entirety of this video. It took me, I really can't even remember when the fuck this video, but when Obsession itself came out. It was probably end of May or maybe even like mid-June, give or take. And so it's been about a month of learning, editing, going through different software. I've been back and forth between Nashville and Memphis a lot since then, and this whole process has been really enlightening for me in terms of what it takes to produce a video, what it takes to edit it, what it takes to, even do research or go on a stream of consciousness conversation about something that I really care about. And these are things that I do with my friends. Like, if you know, I'm a fucking rapper, and so I'll spend hours talking about things that don't even seem connected but really are. And that's what I want to bring about with my art, especially in this format where y'all are finally like hearing me talk more, because there are people who probably never heard me fucking speak. I'm very much reserved on a regular basis, but know that I might be talking about some foolishness, shit that don't even seem like it connect, and then boom skis, you find that it connects to literally everything. And that's kind of like what I feel like my whole purpose here is. I like to consider myself the great synthesizer, because who are we if not, not just products and subjects of our environment, but we are also everybody that we interact with on a regular basis. And so I aim to really show niggas that we are connected to everything. We're connected to one another, even if we seem different for one reason or another, and that the earth is always trying to get us on a vibration of being able to really perceive the inherent connections between every single thing that we even talk about in media. And so I enjoy film, I enjoy music. Maybe I'll add some little music interpretation, stuff like that. If you peep the samples that I had throughout the entirety of this video, I fuck with you. I also produced the beat in the very beginning. It's been a minute since I've done it, but I really like what I've come up with, and I'll also have some links to my stuff, links to songs using the outro and everything like that. But once again, super grateful that anybody watches this, because in real life, I just be talking. It's not that it don't have meaning, but so much of what I felt like would be hard about doing this was just simply me feeling like everybody's perception of me was gonna matter more than what I felt was necessary to put out for the world. And so, yeah, very grateful for that. If you want to subscribe, I do ask that you kindly do. I appreciate it in any form or fashion. You can also follow my Instagram, which is by the same tag, yeaaaa, which is JAEINTUENTI. That'll be, linked and stuff below, but just in case you don't want to know how to fucking spell it and pronounce it. And then I also have my art page, J1. That is where I'll be posting most of my art content, whether that be my paintings, my drawings. I also do poetry on Substack by the same name. And then also I'll be posting some clips, little sneak peeks into my new videos and different topics. And hopefully very soon I aim to have my J1 page be kind of like a community and a forum where we can think about different topics to discuss. I'm always thinking about stuff or encountering stuff to discuss. So I hope that, this inspires other people to have conversations about the same things, or dare to research, think deeply, and really dare to be wrong for a second, have your mind challenged, and then, form an entirely different opinion about things. And so Yeah, that's what I aspire. I have a lot of other goals for the channel. It's not really quantified by metrics. I just really want people to feel like they're, regardless of where they're at, they have a friend in me. And it's not that, ooh, I'm being all y'all business or nothing like that. But hopefully by inviting y'all a little bit into mine, y'all feel less alone or feel less, say, despondent about the state of the world. Because I completely understand what's going on right about now to a degree I can't even fully get into in the outro of this video, but know that I am with you. My heart is with y'all, and like by the grace of God, all of this shit is very soothing to anybody. And I pray that at the end of the day, I stay strong, resilient, cool as fuck, and you do the same fucking thing. Like, just be a real nigga. I know it's easier said than done sometimes, but in real life, all you gotta do is be yourself, bruh. All you gotta do is be yourself, man. With that being said, like, in God's name, we praying for the spirit guides and ancestors. We say, Amen and Ashe. Love y'all.